The border crisis continues. As we remember, Title 42 expired, and the numbers were already very high for illegal crossings, and they continue to be very high. And I think that what's showing the realities of the illegal immigrant wave into this country more than anything else right now is how it's being handled in big blue Democrat cities. New York and Chicago come to mind. In Chicago, they haven't gotten nearly as many. New York, the number is over 40,000 now. But in Chicago, the migrants that they have, they're trying to figure out where they can put them. I think they've even started to try to find space in some police stations, and they're trying to find temporary housing. In Manhattan, it has gotten to a point, or I should say New York City, it has gotten to a point where the mayor, Eric Adams, has thought about housing these migrants in school gymnasiums, which a lot of very generally reliable Biden and Democrat voters were like, hold on a second, you can't do that in my kid's school. Well, why? If the gym's not being used, or if what's the problem? That's what I would want to ask those individuals. But this problem continues to get worse in New York for budgetary reasons, and it is showing in a way that I think really lands with people what the challenges are of just having unrestricted illegal immigration into the country. It is a massive resource drain, and at a time when a lot of Americans are struggling in a whole range of ways, and inflation continues to be high, and we have a lot of needs out there for the people, for our people, the American people. I think it's fair to ask what the heck is going on here. Well, back in New York, though, Eric Adams is actually saying that, first of all, he refers to our newest Americans. He's referring to them as Americans already. And he says that they should be able to work, play nine.
We have one message: let them work. That is our clear message that we're sending. We must expedite work authorization for asylum seekers, not in the future, but now. So we're calling on the White House and the United States Department of Homeland Security to ensure our newest Americans can work lawfully and build stable lives for themselves and our countries.
Can I just, he's talking about people who entered the country illegally, Clay, who have papers just that show they're foreign nationals, but they've been here for a couple of days and they're Americans. This is remarkable. I mean, when you really think about what the implications are, forget about assimilation, forget about our legal process, forget about everything. You came here illegally, you're now an American. That's how he speaks about it. On the other side of the equation, Ron DeSantis down in Florida, he just signed in this law for the state of Florida, mandatory E-Verify for businesses with 25 or more employees. Not as much exploitation of the illegal immigrant labor pool going on down in Florida.
Yeah, and the reality is this just is a disaster already that becomes more disastrous as we go forward, because he's calling them Americans. They're not going to leave. And it doesn't surprise you that they would refuse to leave. There was a story over the weekend, I think in the Sunday New York Times, talking about the fact that Brazil is now giving many people asylum. So the new route to the United States is running through Brazil. People are flying, and in particular, this article focused on Afghan people. They're flying to Brazil, Buck, and they are walking all the way, and traveling buses and everything else, but traveling thousands of miles, many of them, all the way from Brazil up through, I believe it's called the Darien Pass, which used to be considered basically impossible to go through for much of immigration history. This little part of this area, it's very much a jungle, basically. Only 10,000 people, they said, went through this Darien Pass area for
in
early
Panama,
parts.
the Darien Gap, yeah.
Darien Gap, yes. Only like 10,000 people went through there in early parts of the 21st century. Now, this past year, I believe the number was 400,000. So the way that people are able to reach the southern border is, and it's not just, we focus a lot on the idea of it's people from Mexico or whatever else. No. It's people from around the world now that are coming across our southern border, and they're overwhelmingly doing it by just landing in a Latin American country and making their way north.
Yeah, over 170 countries, I think, now have been represented in the illegals who have crossed into America. And I think everyone needs to be reminded that they're exploiting the asylum program. So what they're doing is they are saying, hey, if I go back to any of 160 countries, okay, if I go back to any of 160 countries, I will be subject to persecution, violence, and even possibly being executed. So a program that we have so that when the Khmer Rouge are, murdering millions of people, and some people are able to get here to America to freedom and to safety. The program that we have so that, if there's the rise of, something akin to Nazism again, and people have a place they need to escape violence, genocide, and that level of persecution. You got people who are showing up here from Pakistan who are like, I just want to be in America. It's a better jobs market. But they're pretending to be asylum seekers. The fact that this never gets talked about, I think, is a big problem. This is immoral. I mean, they're exploiting. This would be like people who think about it this way. If people were showing up at a soup kitchen and they were saying, I'm really down on my luck. I really need food. And you found out, no, they're actually saving up for a really expensive car, and they realize that the food from the soup kitchen means, they're cutting their expenses $500 a month, and they want that expensive car. Wouldn't you feel abused? Wouldn't you feel used? That is what these people are doing. They're pretending to be something they are not, and they're exploiting the goodwill of the American people to do so.
And they're getting court dates years from now. And what's going to happen it's not falsehood. Years from now, they're being told, hey, you need to show up in an immigration court in 2025.
And they're never even going to show, Clay.
Correct.
They're never even going to show.
Not only that, Buck, many of them are going to have kids. And their kids are going to be American citizens in the meantime.
And so then what happens?
They show can't up, kick them out.
Then they maybe do show up to the immigration court and say, hey, my American citizen child is here. You can't break up families. We all see how this scam is running. Look, if Democrats were being honest, they should just tell the electorate, we don't think we should have immigration laws. It's a free-for-all. But then a lot of people would say, if we don't have immigration laws, why should we have extraterritorial taxation? Like, why should I feel like I should be compelled to pay for the taxes for this country if somebody can come here without any law, in violation of our law, and be an American, according to Eric Adams? The people that have arrived here that just came from, whether it's Thailand or Honduras or Pakistan or the Cote d'Ivoire or wherever, all over the world, they're just as American as everybody listening to this, except they are legally and culturally and in every sense not.
And what I loved about this story, and it's a fascinating story, I would encourage people to read it. It's in the New York Times, Buck. It specifically says, to your point on asylum, these Afghani refugees are not in danger once they land in Brazil and once they make their way north. They just can't make as much money in those countries as they could here.
This is why when I tell you it is a scam, we, the American people, are being scammed. It is a fraud. If you are a refugee, okay, if you are hopping off the boat because you don't want to go back to the Soviet Union, because if you do, you're going to be tortured and executed, and this is your last chance. You don't land in New Jersey and say, oh, man, I was hoping for Montreal. So, you just take what you take where you're safe. And that is long-standing refugee. It's a matter of law, actually, in America. We just forget about it. None of these people who are applying for asylum, if you apply the actual statutes of immigration, when I say none, someone say, oh, okay, less than 1% of them are coming into this country in a way where if you really looked at the letter of the law, they would qualify for real asylum in this country. Because if they were in Mexico before they were here, or to your point, Clay, even Brazil, and they didn't apply for asylum there first, they are ineligible for asylum in America. Does the Biden administration care? No. Does Eric Adams care? No. And for anyone saying, oh, well, these blue cities, they're just going to collapse under their own bad policies. Nuh-uh. You live in Texas. You live in Montana. You live in, name a state. Your federal taxes are going to go to the bailout of New York and Chicago and LA and, you name it. That's the way this is going. That's their plan. They have a plan, which is why they're already lobbying the Biden administration for more federal funds. So we see where this is all heading. The question is, do we have the will as a country to do something about it?